controller! It's the controller! It's the controller!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Big Chunky. We are back with another top 13. It's my turn this time.
Yay!
Yay! So, yours have been all about comic books. So far, my one has been my top favorite. Zelda games, my pride and joy, Zelda. So, what do you need to do, or what do you need to have in order to play Zelda?
Well, let me tell you this. I know the answer.
Yeah?
You're talking about the most important piece of machinery in modern history today.
Modern history.
Modern
Is that right?
history, yes.
Okay, why?
As far as I'm concerned,
Okay.
everything that is good or bad in my childhood happened because of what you're talking about today. All the great things that happened, all the awful things that happened. Glory be to your subject today.
Why do you say this?
Because it's never my fault.
Okay. We're talking about the top 13 video game controllers of all time. My top 13. I have a different opinion than you have. Don't get at me. Let's go ahead and start.
Let's do it.
Number 13.
Now, first, before we do this,
Sure.
do you have a set criteria? Or just like, I like these better because of any reason whatsoever?
I take the controller as a whole.
Mm-hmm. The look of it?
Design.
Okay. So
I would say.
Well, I mean, I'm saying like design meaning aesthetically how, whatever.
I don't give
one
a
thing.
I don't care about how a controller looks as long as it feels good in your hands and it works.
Okay.
If it works, that's cool. So, number 13, I'm starting out with the classic, the NES controller.
Yep.
So, the NES is widely known as the first home console that ever had what? In America, a D-pad. So, Nintendo invented the D-pad. Pioneers. But, of course, this controller, super simple. What?
Well,
What?
I mean, the Atari joystick is nothing but a D-pad.
But it's a thing that you use with your thumb. A D-pad is
I
a thing
get
you
it.
use with your thumb.
All right.
That's a joystick.
I'm with you.
Different thing.
I've
Joystick.
been educated. There's no way there's 12 controllers better, but anyway. Go ahead.
Oh, there are. Because this controller is shaped like a goddamn brick. It's pointy. It's not the most comfortable thing to hold in your hands.
Shaped like a cosmic brownie.
It's shaped like a cosmic brownie. You're
Yeah.
right. And for whatever reason, these controllers discolor really, really easily. So you find them in a lot of different shades of brown. But I put it on here because it's very important with the D-pad. It's simple. Only has 2 buttons. It's easy to pick up and understand. But it's not the most comfortable thing.
You're gonna have to elevator pitch me, like you got some convincing to do.
Well, if
I'm
we
looking
move
at this
on, listen,
iconic thing. I've seen T-shirts with this, the color scheme of the gray, black, red. That is
No.
Nintendo.
I absolutely agree with you. It's Nintendo here in America, and it's what everybody remembers Nintendo as. But is it objectively the best controller? No.
I get it.
Because there is a better version of this controller. That is number 12.
That's number 12.
Yes, let's move on to number 12, the Famicom controller.
It looks the same, except it looks like it's in a tin from 1964.
Yeah, it looks like it should hold cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
So, the Famicom controller is almost the same.
Are there Altoids in this?
There are no Altoids in this, I promise. There might be. But it's almost the same. It has the same D-pad. It has the same start and select buttons. But I like the feel of the A and B buttons better on here. They're more squishy. They're more responsive. And the controller is more rounded.
Yeah.
So it feels better in your hands.
It looks smoother.
Yeah. So it feels better in your hands. And of course, you said the color scheme of the NES controller matched that of the NES. This is a perfect...
What is this? Red and...
It's like a goldish...
Off-whitish kind of
It's
thing?
like a goldish.
Anywho.
Yeah, but it matches
Okay.
the color scheme
All right.
of the Famicom.
I can see that because I can dig into my memory banks now back when I was playing Nintendo for like hours on end. At some point, you'd have little indentations in your hands.
I know.
from
That
the
happened to me
corners.
when I was a kid.
Like right
playing
here,
your Nintendo.
Yeah, right here by the thumb.
Yeah.
You'd have Nintendo. I don't know. Maybe that's... I have some tendonitis because of Nintendo.
Nintendonitis, yeah.
Nintendonitis. Is that a real thing?
No, I just made that up.
Oh, that's awesome.
You have Nintendonitis.
Coined it.
Yeah, coined it. ours.
All right.
So we can move on now to number 11.
Number 11.
Now, number 11.
Whoa!
Might
looks like a space shuttle from Star Trek.
It looks like an alien spaceship, right? That is the Sega Dreamcast controller. So the Sega Dreamcast controller it's very big and bulky.
It is not too much smaller than like a smart car.
Shut up.
Anyway,
there are good and bad things about this controller. One good thing is that whenever you actually hold it, it doesn't like it takes a second to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's actually pretty comfortable. Yeah. Because essentially how it's shaped is that right under there, like with the D-pad and right under the buttons, you hold it on the back, and there's two triggers on the back on the left and right side.
Right.
But those are also handles, so you hold it on there, and it's actually pretty ergonomic. And it was really cool because it took an idea that the Nintendo 64.
You can curl it and get in shape.
Absolutely, yeah. It weighs 100 million pounds. But the cool thing is that it stole from the Nintendo 64 controller, because the Nintendo 64 controller had that port on the back where you can plug in.
This is after the 64.
This is after 64. It had that port on the back where you can plug in the Rumble Pack or a memory card or whatever. It stole from that. The Dreamcast had these memory cards. They're called VMUs, the Visual Memory Unit. So it looked like a miniature Game Boy, but it was a memory card. So you plugged it into your controller, and it displayed little data points on there, or it had a little symbol depending on what game you were playing. But some games had VMU support, where you could take the VMU out of the controller and play a little mini game, and then put the controller back in. You get rewards in the game. So that's a pretty cool thing. Yeah. Then everybody liked the VMU. Despite what you might think about the Dreamcast, everybody liked the VMU. It's a really cool little thing. It was just a little pocket little Game Boy. So controller's cool. But now let's crack into the top 10. So number 10, I'm throwing in the Wii Remote.
The Wii Remote and Nunchuck.
Oh man, so I remember Christmas 2006.
Is this the first system that had like two separate contraptions that you could connect together and hold with via? Like, I don't remember any other controller needing an attachment.
I don't know how many controllers needed attachments back in the day.
This is really two controllers in one.
Yes, Nintendo was very good at that, at having controllers that are really kind of two controllers. But I put the Wii Remote on here because of how versatile it is. Because you can hold the Wii Remote by itself, use it as a controller. You can hold it sideways and have a makeshift NES controller. You can plug in the nunchuck, and it's like you have a standard controller, except it's separate, and you can actually kind of relax on it. Yep. Just play normal games. But they also made controllers, like actual controllers, that you plug into the bottom where you plug in the nunchuck, and it's just powered, like the controller is just powered through the batteries on the Wii Remote, so you can just use a regular controller. So it's a super versatile controller, and that's not even talking about the motion controls that are actually in the Wii Remote, where the base motion controls don't really work that super well. Like you play Wii Sports, and it's not the most accurate thing ever. Yeah, but then you plug in the Wii Motion Plus, and it's 1-to-1. And that's displayed, I think, best and worst a lot of the times because when it works, it really works. When it doesn't work, it's the worst. But it
ruins the game.
Yeah, it's like wrestling. Like really good wrestling is really good, but awful wrestling is awful. But it's best displayed in Skyward Sword. So a lot of Wii remotes eventually came with the Wii Motion Plus inside of it, so you didn't have to buy an attachment. So it worked right out of the box with all the Wii games. But it's a very versatile controller. I remember waking up Christmas 2006, loving it, playing Twilight Princess. It was awesome. So I have fond memories of the Wii remote.
You're welcome.
Yes. Thank you for the Christmas gift. All right, let's move on to number 9. So number 9 might be a tad bit controversial because people don't really like this controller. It's the original Xbox controller, the slim version. Because the actual original Xbox controller was like 25% bigger and just horrid and uncomfortable to hold because you had to have shack hands in order to play it.
See, this is where you lose me.
What?
This is where I was lost.
Yeah, this is when you stop playing video games.
Yeah, when you start getting to the point where you've got a D-pad, 2 analog sticks, 8 buttons, probably 2, 3, 4, 8 triggers. I'm just...
So
no,
it's not as scary as it looks. Microsoft put too many buttons on here. Those buttons, the white and black button down there, hardly have an effect in most games, but for Halo, you press the white button, it turns on your flashlight, and you press the black button, and it turns it off. So
Yeah, that's cool.
It's unnecessary. There's only 2 triggers on there, one on each side. The D-pad on this controller is okay, but I never had an original Xbox when I was a kid, so I bought one a couple years ago, and I played SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom on it. Play it, but I had never held that controller. So a lot of people think it's a little too bulky, and I think it's a little too bulky, but even the slim version is a little too bulky. I have really tiny hands, but once you get used to playing it for a little bit, it's pretty comfortable, and it controls really well. So
You and your tiny hands.
I have tiny hands. I'm like the SNL sketch. But that's number 9. We can move on to number 8. This is something you're very familiar with.
Ah, yes.
So now we have the Sega Genesis
Classic
6-button controller.
Sega Genesis.
Yes. So initially, the Sega Genesis.
This was the first I can remember that had the X, Y, and Z button.
Yes.
That I can remember.
I think that's the only one that had the X, Y, Z at that time. So this is the Sega Genesis 6-button controller. Now, everybody's familiar with the Sega Genesis 3-button controllers that had the big ABC buttons on it, but the 6-button the 6-button controller added the XYZ. Mm-hmm. So, to give an example, for playing games like Mortal Kombat, on the 3-button controller, it's the worst because you have to press down a combination of buttons in order to get all of your things or all of your moves out. Whereas with the 6-button controller, every move is mapped to a button. So you don't have to press, I think it's the select button and whatever button you want to hit, the ABC for the 3-button controller. So the 6-button eliminates the select button entirely, so you don't need it.
Well, it made the finishing moves in Mortal Kombat a lot easier.
It made everything in Mortal Kombat a lot easier. Yeah. Everybody, like, you have to use the 6-button controller if you're playing fighting games.
With the 3-button controller, it was like I couldn't do a lot of the finishing moves. It was just
exactly.
I didn't have the dexterity.
Yeah, so it's good for games like that where there's a lot of moves that you have to do and a lot of button combinations that you would otherwise have to press. But for games like Sonic, where literally the only button you have to hit is A, you can use whatever. But that was a big improvement on the original controller for the Sega Genesis. So let's move on to number 7, the Wii U Pro Controller. Now, I am one of the 8 people in the universe that bought a Wii U.
Wow.
So
I didn't know this was a thing.
Right. So this is Nintendo's really their first endeavor into an actual modern controller, standalone controller, because the Xbox had been out, the PlayStation kind of didn't change their design for like 15 years until the PlayStation 4 came out. So this is Nintendo's first endeavor into a real pro controller, a real controller that is on its own and takes the modern shape. But there's a little bit of a difference because you don't ever see sticks that are
up top.
They're up top and they're lined up parallel. Because with the PlayStation they're down at the bottom, parallel, and the Xbox they're offset. So Nintendo chose that. Probably to mimic the design of the gamepad, which you have seen before. It's the big damn controller that looks like a cutting board with a screen. So it's just a smaller version of that. No, it didn't. Actually, I think that might be a little bit more comfortable, but the battery life on this thing is fucking insane. I've had my controller for, I don't know, 3 years. I think I've charged it 4 times. It has like an 80-hour battery life on one charge. It's insane. But the thing I don't like about this controller is that it's a little too light, so it feels kind of fragile. But it's really comfortable, and it works really well, and it lasts forever. So that's number 7.
Number 7.
Let's move on to number 6. The Nintendo 64.
N64.
Nintendo 64 controller. So
yes,
this controller is hated in a lot of ways, but I have so many fond memories with the 64 controller, and it's really, really important because it revolutionized 2 different things that are modern standards. First of all, it had Rumble. Not built in, but you could buy a pack that made the controller rumble.
Known as
the Rumble Pack.
The Rumble Pack.
And it also is the first controller to ever have a standard analog stick. for moving around in 3D. Like the PlayStation, when it came out, it had 3D games, but you had to control them with the damn D-pad. So it was awful. So the analog stick is a modern revolution, and Rumble is a modern revolution. So Nintendo 64 controller, despite how it looks, and despite how you may hold it, and argue about how other people hold it,
so
it's a very, very important controller.
So it's got the left and the right. It's got the B, right? Or the whatever it's called.
It has a Z trigger, yeah.
Z trigger in the middle?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I loved this controller when it came out. And
you were there when it came out. How did you feel?
No, it took a little while to get used to the analog stick.
Sure.
I was like, for the first time ever, you're like, oh my gosh, you're all over the place.
Right.
But, it obviously was a huge improvement. I like the 4 different C buttons and how they're slightly smaller, slightly farther, so it doesn't feel like it's 6 buttons and I can get lost and like, which one am I hitting? You're still A, B, A, B, A, B.
For the most part.
But they're smaller and they're up to the right a little bit, which helped me.
Yeah, and the good thing is that they're unmistakable.
Yeah.
So, very important controller. The D-pad was never, ever, ever, ever used on this controller. That's the least used D-pad of all time. Period. But that's number 6. Let's move on to number 5. We're cracking the top 5 here. Oh. So this here is it's weird. This is a weird choice because no one ever uses this controller. No one, whenever they go back and play PS1 games, they don't use this controller. They just use a PS2 controller or a PS1 or the one with the analog sticks. But this is the original PlayStation 1 controller with no analog sticks because it takes the design of the Super Nintendo controller, outright steals it, but adds those little palm rests. So it fits easier in your hands. And rather than having 2 shoulder buttons, it has 4 shoulder buttons for more inputs. But
was there a reason, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your toes here.
No, you're fine.
Was there a reason that this is the first controller I can remember that went away from letters?
Right.
There's no ABC buttons.
Yes.
It's shapes.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah.
There is a reason for that. Good. Very good question. I'm proud of you. So originally, you see the circle button. Let's go around. The circle button was supposed to be the standard input on all games for yes. And the cross, it's called a cross. It's an X.
It's an X.
Everybody says X. Was supposed to be the standard for no. The square was supposed to be standard for menus, opening up your menu, and the triangle, I forget what the triangle was for. But they all had specific intentions that were immediately disregarded, and people just did whatever they want with the buttons.
Yeah, like they had to, right?
Yeah, just do whatever.
There's X in it being the standard.
X is now the A button for the PlayStation.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, but is there a reason they didn't just do A, B, C, D?
That was the reason. They wanted symbols to make it, to quote unquote, easier for the user and developer to have standards.
Okay. And I'm assuming, I guess also, I don't know, from a global standpoint, there are languages that don't use
absolutely
our alphabet.
Yeah.
So anyway, makes sense.
Yeah. So it's a very good design. I never really cared for the PlayStation's D-pad. It's not really a D-pad. It's kind of just buttons. Underneath is an actual pad, so it doesn't feel like you're just pressing buttons, but it's not the best. So that's number 5. Let's go on to number 4. And we're sticking with PlayStation because this is, barring the PS5 that hasn't come out yet, the most modern iteration of the controller we've just seen. So PlayStation, for the longest time, after the first controller that you just saw, they added 2 analog sticks down at the bottom, and then the design didn't change until the PlayStation 4. So the controller was shaped exactly the same, basically, until the PlayStation 4, which made it larger, more ergonomic. They added that touchpad in the middle. That is pretty underused, but it acts as pretty much like the start button and, just a general button for like opening up your map or whatever. So, but it's so comfortable. It's for people that have tiny hands like me. Even the original PlayStation controller is a little too tiny. The palm rests are too small, but this is perfect. It fits right in your hands. The only bad thing about this controller really is that the battery only lasts for like 4 hours, because for whatever reason they put a bar on there on the controller. It's a light bar, and it changes colors depending on what's happening in your games, which is kind of cool, because like whenever the cops get called on you in GTA, it flashes red and blue, and it's gimmicky, but you can't turn it off, so it just destroys the battery life. So that sucks. So good controller overall, but battery life kind of bad. Let's move on to number 3, top 3.
Ooh, all right.
So my number 3 is the Super Nintendo controller.
All right.
It has all the good parts about the NES controller. The D-pad, the size of it. The size is generally the same, but it adds those 2 shoulder buttons on there for extra inputs. Wonderful. Modern evolution.
And the XY.
XY. So it has 4 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons. The classic Nintendo D-pad. The D-pad that Nintendo made in the 80s and 90s is unmatched. They did the best one. And that's why I think this controller is better than the original PlayStation controller. Now, if the original PlayStation controller had that D-pad in it, it would be the best controller. In that kind of style, with no analog sticks. The best controller for 2D games. Because it's very important.
Yeah, I didn't really touch on it when we looked at the PlayStation one, because that's one of the things I liked about the D-pad is that you can just kind of glide from one direction to the other.
Right, exactly.
And you can't do that with the PlayStation.
You
You're
can.
bouncing around.
No, you can. It's
just
it doesn't feel as natural.
It doesn't flow.
No. In other iterations of the PlayStation controller, especially the DualShock 4 that we just saw, the PlayStation 4 controller, they move the buttons closer together and they put like a little indentation in the middle, so it's easier to do that rolling. But Nintendo's is unmatched. That's why it feels right for playing 2D games. And that's just about it.
All right. That's number 3.
That's number 3. So number 2.
Runner up.
Number 2.
Oh.
This was tough. This was tough for me. Number 1 and number 2 were tough. But I decided to go with the GameCube controller. GameCube. My favorite system of all time. The controller feels supernatural. Not, supernatural like ghosts, but
Yeah.
it feels very natural.
It's not
It's a whole new
otherworldly.
hand. It's not otherworldly. People hate the buttons.
Really?
People don't like. Yeah, a lot of people dislike the shape of the buttons because
They don't like the kidney beans?
yeah, X and Y are shaped like beans. A is huge. B is really tiny.
Yeah.
Z is the C stick kind of sucks. The D-pad is bad on this
It's a
controller.
little
I'm
stiff.
gonna straight out say that the D-pad sucks. But when you hold the controller, it has analog triggers, so you can hear the press down, and sensitivity matters in certain games.
Yeah.
Or if you don't press it all the way down, it doesn't shoot it
Yeah.
like your water as far.
John Madden.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never played Madden on the GameCube.
Madden football, yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of my favorite controllers. I have probably used this controller to play more games than I've used any other controller. I have logged the most hours on that controller.
GameCube is awesome.
I love the GameCube.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's just it's the one of the most comfortable controllers. Everything just feels right. They're durable as fuck. They just never break.
Which is important.
It's incredibly important. But it just missed the mark for number 1. Because number 1 is a more modern controller.
Controller of all time.
Modern Nintendo. Does some wonders.
Nintendo Switch.
Does some wonders. Nintendo Switch Pro controller. The Nintendo Switch Pro controller is single-handedly the most comfortable controller you can hold in your hands.
It looks like one of those big pillows you put on the couch and you sit up against it.
It does. That picture does make it look like that.
It's like a 3D picture. I just want to sit in it.
Wow. Yeah. No. This controller it's so good.
Are those padded?
They're not padded. They're textured.
I feel like I want to wear this around my neck on an airplane.
No, they're inverted ribbed. It's textured, but it doesn't slide out of your hands
That's
unless you're
sleek.
greasy.
I've never seen it. It's pretty sleek looking.
Dude, it's It's the most comfortable controller. Like you pick it up and it just melts into your hands. Your hands fit on everything perfectly. The battery life on it is crazy. Like you heard me talk about the DualShock 4, the PlayStation 4 controller's battery life being like 4 hours, 5 hours. This thing lasts for 40 hours easy on one charge.
Nice.
It has all the functions, except for it doesn't have analog triggers, but that's not it. The Switch has sold plenty of units to prove that doesn't really matter all that much.
Yeah.
But the only bad thing about this controller is the D-pad. The D-pad is kind of stiff, and you can hit all the buttons at once, which is bad. But other than that, it's really, with all the features that are packed into it, it has motion aiming. So you can, in a lot of shooter games, you can use the controller as, like, it's probably the closest thing to a mouse. So it gives you that extra little bit of accuracy. So you can move the camera for your big motions with the stick, but then use the little motions in the motion to get more accuracy. But overall, best controller. Fight me. Anybody can
I like it.
say different, but
I like the list. I guess I touched probably 4 or 5 of these.
Yeah, you've had a lot of experience with
I would like in the future to do another controller episode, but maybe focus on the innovative side, the importance, the historical significance
to
gaming.
Absolutely.
That controllers bring. Because I think it'd be a totally different list.
It would be a completely different list. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, another story for another day.
Absolutely.
Awesome list.
Yeah, I had a good time doing this.
I'll bet you did.
I had to go over to my shelf and look at all the systems I have.
I had to play with my toys.
Yeah, I had to go. And these are all first-party controllers. Now, there's always been people making third-party controllers that work on systems.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favorite third-party controllers is right up there for the Nintendo 64, but we can do a separate episode for controllers that aren't first-party, came in the box with the system. Because I have plenty of those, and a lot of them are really, really good. But let us know what you guys think about this top 13 list. Do you agree with my controller choices, or am I stupid? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Leave the video a like if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. Subscribe for more content like this, and we'll see you on the next one.